June Mercer stepped off the stage into Eagle Hollow with a forged letter in her pocket and a lie already shaping on her tongue. The inheritance was real enough. The reason she needed it so badly was not something she could speak aloud. She tightened her grip on her travel case and scanned the row of weathered storefronts, looking for the land office. A man in a heavy coat and suspenders watched her from beside a roan mare, his gaze too steady to be casual. She turned her back on him and headed for the general store. Inside, the warmth hit her face like a slap. The clerk looked up, then past her shoulder, and his expression changed. June turned. The man from the street stood in the doorway, blocking the light. He did not smile. "Step inside or step aside," she said. He stepped inside. The door swung shut behind him. "You June Mercer?" he asked. His voice was low, rough at the edges. She lifted her chin. "I am." "And you are?" "Levi Granger. I own Crescent Ranch, 5 miles east. Your aunt mentioned you in a letter last fall." June's pulse kicked. Her aunt had died 3 months ago, leaving June a small house and 20 acres she had never seen. She had not known her aunt well. They had exchanged only a handful of stilted letters after June's parents made it clear they wanted nothing more to do with a daughter who had disgraced herself by breaking an engagement to a congressman's son. The memory still burned. "I am here to settle the estate," June said. Levi's gaze did not waver. "Then you will want to know the county clerk has questions about the deed." He paused. "And the sheriff has questions about you." June's stomach dropped. She forced her voice to stay level. "What questions?" Levi glanced at the clerk, who suddenly found urgent work in the back room. When they were alone, Levi stepped closer. "Someone sent a warrant for a woman matching your description. Schoolteacher. Auburn hair. Traveling alone from St. Louis. The charge is theft of private documents." June's hands went cold. The papers. She had taken them from her former fiancé's desk the night she left his house for the last time. Insurance, in case he tried to retaliate for the broken engagement. Letters proving he had bribed a judge. She had never used them, never intended to, but she had kept them hidden in the lining of her travel case. If someone had discovered they were missing, if they had traced her here, "I did not steal anything," she said. Her voice came out thin. Levi studied her face. "Maybe. Maybe not. Either way, the sheriff is going to ask, and if you cannot prove where you were and what you were doing, he will hold you until someone from St. Louis comes to collect you." June's breath caught. She could not go back. If she went back, if the story came out, her parents would see it as the final proof that she had always been a disappointment. She would lose the only chance she had to build a life on her own terms. "How long do I have?" she asked. Levi's expression did not change. "A day, maybe 2, if the storm slows the mail rider." June's mind raced. She could leave tonight, vanish before the warrant arrived. But she had no money beyond what she had brought for the trip, and winter was closing in. She would not make it far on foot. She needed the inheritance. She needed time. She met Levi's eyes. "Why are you telling me this?" He hesitated, just for a breath. "Because I have a problem, and you might be the solution. Or we both go down." June's pulse hammered. "What kind of problem?" Levi moved to the window, checked the street, then turned back. 3 weeks ago, someone torched my north pasture fence and ran off 20 head of cattle. The sheriff thinks I did it myself for the insurance claim. I did not. But the only man who can prove I was in town that night is dead, and his widow will not talk to me because she thinks I owe her husband money. I do not. I paid him in full. But the receipt was in my saddlebag, and my saddlebag was stolen the same night the fence burned. June's breath came shallow. So you are accused of a crime you did not commit. Just like me. Levi's jaw tightened. Maybe like you. I do not know your story yet. But here is mine. If I cannot prove I was in town, the sheriff will arrest me, and I will lose the ranch. I need someone who can stand up in front of the town and say I am trustworthy. Someone respectable. Someone new, who does not have history here. Someone like a school teacher. June's mind spun. And in return, I marry you tonight. And tomorrow I tell the sheriff you are my wife, and you have been living quiet in St. Louis until now, waiting for me to send for you. No theft, no scandal, just a private woman coming west to join her husband. Levi's gaze pinned her. The warrant will not match a married woman with a local name. You will have time to prove your side, or to disappear if you need to. But you help me first. June stared at him. You are asking me to lie to a sheriff. He is asking you to trust a stranger. She thought of the forged letter in her pocket, the stolen papers in her case. The years of trying to be good enough, only to be cast aside the moment she made one mistake. Her parents had not even read her letters after the engagement broke. They had returned them unopened. She had nothing left to lose by taking one more risk. And if Levi Granger was lying, if this was a trap, at least she would see it coming. I want half the inheritance in my name, she said. Separate account. If this marriage is a fiction, I keep what is mine. Levi's mouth twitched, almost to smile. Agreed. June swallowed. Then we have a deal. They found a circuit preacher in the boarding house 2 doors down, a man with kind eyes and a terrible cough, who asked no questions when Levi handed him $5 and said they wanted it done fast. June barely heard the words. She stood in a cramped parlor that smelled of lamp oil and old tobacco, her hand cold in Levi's rough grip and repeated vows that felt like a cage door closing. The preacher pronounced them married. Levi did not kiss her. He released her hand, nodded once, and turned to the door. We leave at first light, he said. Pack for a week on the trail. June blinked. A week. Where are we going? To the man who sold me that fence timber. He lives 2 days north, past Crowder Pass. If I can get his signed statement, it will prove I bought materials for repair weeks before the fire. The timing will not match the sheriff's theory. June's chest tightened. That is your alibi. Part of it. The rest is you, standing beside me and making me look like a man with a future instead of a man with a warrant. He met her eyes. I need you to look like you believe in me, even if you do not. Especially if you do not. June's throat closed. She nodded. Levi left. She stood alone in the boarding house parlor, a gold ring on her finger that she had not owned an hour ago, and wondered what she had just done. They rode out before the sun cleared the ridge. The air bit at June's face, sharp and clean. She had not been on a horse in 3 years, and her thighs ached after the first mile. Levi did not slow. He rode ahead, his shoulders square, his gaze scanning the trail. June followed, her hands stiff on the reins. The town fell away behind them. The land opened up, rolling and brown, dotted with scrub and rock. By midday, they reached the base of Crowder Pass. The trail narrowed, climbing between steep slopes dusted with early snow. Levi finally pulled up and waited for her to draw even. "You ride well enough," he said. She shot him a look. "You expected me to fall off." He almost smiled. "I expected you to complain." June's jaw tightened. "I do not complain." Levi studied her for a beat too long, then turned his horse uphill. The pass climbed for another hour. The wind picked up, cold and thin, carrying the smell of snow. June's fingers went numb inside her gloves. She focused on the trail, on keeping her mare steady, on not thinking about how far they were from town, or how little she actually knew about the man riding ahead of her. They crested the pass just as the first flakes started to fall. Levi reined in, his gaze on the sky. He swore under his breath. June pulled up beside him. "What is wrong?" He pointed west, where the clouds had gone dark and low, a bruised purple mass rolling toward them. "That storm was not supposed to hit until tomorrow night. We need to get off this ridge. Now." They pushed the horses hard down the north side of the pass. The snow thickened, blowing sideways, turning the trail white. June's mare stumbled once, caught herself, kept moving. June's heart slammed. She could not see more than 20 feet ahead. Levi was a dark shape in the storm, his coat dusted with snow. He turned in the saddle, shouted something she could not hear over the wind. She urged her mare closer. He leaned toward her. "Cabin," he shouted. "Half a mile. Stay close." She nodded. He turned and spurred his roan forward. June followed, her face numb, her lungs burning with cold air. The world narrowed to the horse's mane, the snow, the shape of Levi ahead. Then he stopped. She nearly ran into him. He dismounted, grabbed her mare's bridle, and pointed. Through the snow, June saw a low shape, a dark break in the wall. A cabin, tucked against a rock face, half buried in drifts. Levi pulled both horses toward it. June slid down, her legs shaking. Levi kicked open the cabin door. Inside it was dark and cold, but the walls were solid and the roof intact. He pulled the horses in after them. June stared. "There is no stable. There is no choice," Levi said flatly. "They stay inside, or they freeze." He tied the horses to a roof beam, then started clearing snow from the fireplace. June's hands shook as she pulled off her gloves. Her fingers were white, the tips burning. Levi glanced at her, then at her hands. His expression changed. He crossed to her in 2 strides, took her hands in his, and pressed them between his palms. His skin was rough, warm, startling. She gasped. He did not let go. "Breathe," he said quietly. "You are all right." June's throat tightened. She nodded. He held her hands a moment longer, then released them and went back to the fireplace. June stood in the dark cabin, her pulse loud in her ears, and wondered if this was what trust felt like, or if she was just desperate enough to mistake warmth for safety. The fire caught. Levi built it up, slow and careful, until the flames pushed back the dark. June moved closer, her whole body shaking now that the adrenaline had worn off. Levi pulled a tin of coffee and a pot from his pack, filled it with snow, and set it on the fire. They sat in silence while the water heated. June's mind would not settle. She kept seeing the storm, the white slope, the moment her mare had stumbled. If they had been 5 minutes slower, if Levi had not known this cabin was here. "You have done this before," she said. Her voice cracked. "Ridden through a storm." Levi nodded. "Twice. Once I made it. Once I did not." He poured coffee into 2 tin cups, handed her one. She wrapped her hands around it, felt the heat seep into her palms. "What happened the time you did not make it?" she asked. He took a slow sip, his gaze on the fire. "I lost 3 toes and a horse I had raised from a colt. I was 17. I thought I knew better than the weather." He looked at her. "I learned." June steadied his face, the hard line of his jaw, the scar that cut through his eyebrow. He was not a man who softened things. He was not a man who lied to make someone feel better. And somehow, that steadied her more than comfort would have. "Why did you really tell me about the warrant?" she asked. "You could have let the sheriff arrest me and saved yourself the trouble." Levi set down his cup. "Because I saw your face when you got off that stage. You looked like someone who had run out of places to go." He paused. "I know what that feels like." June's chest tightened. She wanted to ask what he had run from, what had driven him west, but the question felt too raw. "Instead," she said, "I took the papers. The ones they say I stole. I took them, and I would take them again." Levi's gaze did not waver. "Why?" "Because they proved the man I was engaged to was corrupt. And if I had not taken them, he would have destroyed them, and no one would ever have known." She swallowed. "I thought keeping them made me smart. It just made me a target." Levi was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Did you use them?" "No." "Did you sell them?" "No." "Then you did not steal them. You took evidence." "There is a difference." June stared at him. Her parents had called her reckless. Her fiancé had called her vindictive. No one had ever called her right. She looked away before he could see her eyes sting. "Thank you," she said quietly. Levi stood, moved to the door, checked the storm. "It is not letting up. We will be here until morning." June nodded. She pulled her blanket tighter and tried not to think about how small the cabin was, or how close he would be when they slept. She woke in the dark to the sound of boots on wood. She sat up fast, her heart pounding. Levi stood by the door, his silhouette black against the gray square of the window. The storm had stopped. He turned. "You are awake." She pushed her hair back, her mind still foggy. "What time is it?" "Maybe 4. We should move before the next squall hits." June stood, shook out her blanket, and rolled it tight. Her body ached, her muscles stiff from cold and fear, and a night spent sleeping upright against the cabin wall. But she did not complain. They saddled the horses in silence, led them out into the pre-dawn gray. The world was white, the trail buried under 2 feet of fresh snow. Levi mounted, waited for June to do the same, then started north. The pace was slow, the horses breaking trail with every step. By the time the sun rose, June's thighs burned and her hands were numb again. But the air was clear, sharp with cold, and the pass was behind them. They reached the valley by noon. A cluster of buildings sat at the base of a long ridge, smoke rising from chimneys. Levi pointed. That is Terrence Ford's place. If he will sign the statement, we can be back to Eagle Hollow in 3 days. June nodded. And if he will not? Then we have nothing, and the sheriff arrests me the day we ride back. Levi's voice was flat, but his jaw was tight. June felt a cold knot form in her stomach. She had tied herself to this man, and if he went down, she would go down with him. Or she would run and lose the inheritance and spend the rest of her life looking over her shoulder. She urged her mare forward. Then we make sure he signs. Terrence Ford was a broad man with a gray beard and suspicious eyes. He stood in his doorway, one hand on the frame, and looked from Levi to June and back. I already told the sheriff everything I know, he said. I sold you timber in October. That does not mean you did not burn your own fence in November. Levi's expression did not change. I need you to write that down. The date, the amount, the type of wood. Ford shook his head. I am not getting in the middle of your trouble, Granger. Levi took a step forward. Ford's hand moved to his belt. June saw the holster. She stepped between them, her heart hammering. Mr. Ford, she said, her voice steady. My name is June Granger. I am Levi's wife. I know you do not know me, and you have no reason to trust me. But I need you to understand something. If you do not write that statement, my husband will lose everything he has worked for, and he will lose it because someone is lying, not because he did anything wrong. Ford's gaze shifted to her. She met it, did not look away. I am a schoolteacher, she said. I spent 5 years teaching children to tell the truth even when it is hard. I am asking you to do the same. Ford studied her for a long, silent moment. Then he looked at Levi. You married a hell of a woman, Granger. Levi's mouth twitched. I know. Ford sighed, stepped back, and opened the door wider. Come inside. I will write your damn statement, but you owe me a drink next time you are in town. Levi nodded. Deal. They left Ford's homestead an hour later with a signed statement folded in Levi's coat pocket. June felt light, almost giddy with relief. Levi's expression had not changed, but his shoulders had loosened, just slightly. They rode south in silence, the sun slanting low through the trees. June watched the way he sat his horse, easy and watchful, his gaze moving over the trail, the ridges, the sky. He rode like a man who had learned to expect trouble. She wondered what it had cost him. That night, they camped in a hollow sheltered by pines. Levi built a fire, heated beans and coffee, and they ate without speaking. The silence was not uncomfortable. It was the kind of quiet that came from shared exhaustion and shared success. When the fire burned low, Levi banked it and rolled out his blanket on the far side of the flames. June did the same. She lay on her back, looking up at the stars, and felt the cold creep in around the edges of her blanket. She thought about the cabin, the storm, the way Levi had held her hands until the feeling came back. She thought about the way he had stood behind her when she faced down Ford, silent but solid, letting her speak. No one had ever done that. No one had ever trusted her to handle something hard without stepping in to fix it. She rolled onto her side, facing the fire. Across the flames, Levi lay on his back, his eyes closed. Levi, she said quietly. He opened his eyes. Thank you For what? For letting me be the one to convince him. He was quiet for a beat. Then he said, "You did not need my permission." June's throat tightened. She wanted to say more, wanted to tell him that she had spent years being told she needed to be softer, quieter, less, and that one afternoon with him had made her feel more solid than she had in years. But the words stuck. She closed her eyes and let the fire's warmth lull her toward sleep. When she woke, the stars had wheeled overhead, and Levi was sitting up, his gaze on the dark trees beyond the firelight. She sat up. "What is wrong?" He did not look at her. "Someone is out there." June's pulse kicked. She heard it then, a faint snap of a branch, the rustle of movement in the brush. Levi stood slowly, his hand on his rifle. He did not raise it. His voice was low, calm. "Show yourself." For a long moment, nothing. Then a man stepped into the firelight, hands raised, his face pale and thin. He was young, maybe 20, with a patched coat and worn boots. "I am not armed," he said quickly. I saw the fire. I have been walking for 2 days." Levi did not lower the rifle. "Walking from where?" The man swallowed. "Eagle Hollow. I worked for the land office." Past tense. The man's gaze flicked to June, then back to Levi. "I quit. Or I was about to be fired. I do not know which." He took a shaky breath. "There is something you need to know." The warrant for her. He nodded at June. It did not come from St. Louis. It came from Eagle Hollow. Someone local paid to have it sent. June went cold. Levi's voice was deadly quiet. "Who?" The man hesitated. Then he said, "Samuel Kane. The banker. He has been buying up land around Crescent Ranch for 6 months. He wants your place, Mr. Granger. And he wants it bad enough to frame you for arson, so he can buy it cheap when the bank forecloses." June's mind raced. "And the warrant for me." The man looked at her, something like guilt in his eyes. "I think he found out you were coming to claim your aunt's land. That land borders the north edge of Crescent Ranch. If he can get rid of both of you, he controls the whole valley." Levi's jaw went tight. He lowered the rifle. "Sit down. You are going to tell me everything." The man's name was Peter Calloway, and he talked for an hour. He had worked for Kane, running errands, filing papers, keeping quiet about things that did not add up. But when Kane had ordered him to plant forged receipts in the land office records, Peter had refused. Kane had threatened him. Peter had run. By the time he finished talking, the fire was dying, and the sky was starting to pale. Levi stood, paced to the edge of the firelight, stood with his back to them. June watched him, saw the tension in his shoulders, the way his hands opened and closed. She stood, walked over, stopped a few feet away. "We have Ford's statement," she said quietly. "And now we have Peter's testimony. That is enough to take to the sheriff." Levi turned. His eyes were flat, cold. "Kane owns half the town. The sheriff will not move against him without proof that cannot be ignored. We need more." June's chest tightened. "What more?" Levi looked past her, at Peter. "You said Kane keeps his records in a safe in his office." Peter nodded. "Then we go back to Eagle Hollow," Levi said, "and we get those records." June stared at him. That is breaking and entering. That is suicide. Levi's gaze swung to her. It is the only way to end this. If we ride in with Ford's statement and Peter's word, Cain will have time to cover his tracks. We need to hit him before he knows we are coming. June's mind spun. Everything in her screamed that this was reckless, dangerous, exactly the kind of impulsive choice that had ruined her life once before. But she looked at Peter, pale and shaking by the fire. She thought about the warrant, the lie, the way powerful men bent the world to their will and called it justice. And she thought about Levi, who had married a stranger to give her a chance, who had trusted her to speak for him, who had never once asked her to be less than she was. "I am coming with you," she said. Levi's expression did not change. "No. You stay with Peter. If this goes wrong, if it goes wrong, I lose everything anyway," June cut in. Her voice was steady. "I am not waiting in the woods while you risk your life for something we are both tangled in. We do this together. Or we do not do it at all." Levi stared at her. Then, slowly, he nodded. Together. They reached Eagle Hollow after dark 2 days later. The town was quiet, most of the windows dark. Levi left the horses with Peter in a stand of trees outside town, then led June through the back alleys to the bank. The building was 2 stories, brick, with barred windows and a heavy door. Levi circled it once, then stopped at a side window. The latch was old, the frame warped. He pulled a thin piece of metal from his pocket, worked it into the gap, and the window swung open. June's heart hammered. "This is insane," she whispered. Levi looked at her. "You can still walk away." She shook her head. He climbed through the window. June followed, her skirt catching on the sill. Inside, the bank smelled of ink and dust. Moonlight slanted through the front windows, casting long shadows. Levi moved toward the back office, his steps silent. June stayed close. The office door was locked. Levi knelt, worked the lock with the same piece of metal, and the door clicked open. Inside, a heavy safe sat against the far wall. Levi swore under his breath. June moved to the desk, started opening drawers. Papers, ledgers, a ring of keys. She held up the keys. Levi took them, tried 3 before one fit. The safe door swung open. Inside were stacks of documents, bundles of cash, a leather folder tied with string. Levi pulled out the folder, untied it, and went still. June leaned over his shoulder. The folder was full of letters, receipts, and signed statements, all in Cain's handwriting or bearing his signature. Orders to burn fences. Payments to men for false testimony. A copy of the forged warrant for June, with notes in the margin detailing how much Cain had paid to have it sent. June's breath stopped. "This is everything." Levi closed the folder. "We take this to the sheriff tonight." Behind them, a floorboard creaked. They both spun. Samuel Cain stood in the doorway, a revolver in his hand. His face was calm, almost pleasant. "I wondered when you two would figure it out," he said. "I am impressed. Most people are not this stupid." Levi stepped in front of June. Cain smiled, chivalrous, but pointless. "You are both going to hang for breaking into my bank. Unless, of course, you would like to negotiate." June's voice was ice. There is nothing to negotiate. You framed us. Cain shrugged. I created opportunities. You chose to walk into them. He gestured with the gun. Put the folder down. Step away from the safe. Levi did not move. If you shoot us, the whole town will hear. Cain's smile widened. Then I will say I caught 2 thieves in my office and defended my property. Who do you think they will believe? A respected banker? Or a drifter with a burned fence and a woman with a warrant? June's mind raced. She glanced at the desk, at the open window behind them, at the folder in Levi's hand. They had the evidence. They just needed to get it out of this room. She met Levi's eyes, saw the same calculation there. And then she did the only thing she could think of. She screamed. Loud, piercing, the sound of a woman in mortal terror. Cain flinched. Levi lunged. The gun went off, the shot deafening in the small room. The bullet hit the wall. Levi slammed into Cain, drove him backward into the hall. June grabbed the folder and ran for the window. Behind her, she heard shouting, the crash of bodies against wood. She climbed through the window, hit the ground hard, rolled, kept moving. Boots pounded behind her. She ran. The street was no longer empty. Doors opened. Men stepped out, lanterns in hand. June stopped in the middle of the street, held up the folder, and shouted. Samuel Cain framed Levi Granger and forged a warrant to steal our land. The proof is right here. A man in a star-shaped badge pushed through the crowd. The sheriff. His face was hard. What is going on? June handed him the folder. Read it. Please. The sheriff opened the folder, scanned the first page, his expression shifting. Behind June, Levi stumbled out of the alley, his lip bleeding, his coat torn. Cain followed, the gun still in his hand. He stopped when he saw the crowd. The sheriff looked up. Samuel, put the gun down. Cain's face twisted. She is lying. They both are. The sheriff held up one of the letters. This is your handwriting. Cain's mouth opened, closed. He looked at the crowd, at the faces watching him, and something in him cracked. He raised the gun. Levi moved. Fast, brutal, no hesitation. He tackled Cain, drove him into the dirt. The gun skittered away. 2 men from the crowd grabbed Cain, hauled him up. The sheriff picked up the gun, looked at Levi, then at June. You 2 have a lot of explaining to do. But it can wait until morning. June's legs nearly gave out. Levi crossed to her, his gaze searching her face. You all right? She nodded. Are you? He smiled, just a little. I have been worse. The sheriff took statements until dawn. By the time they were finished, the whole town knew the story. Cain was arrested. Peter Calloway gave a full confession. Ford's statement cleared Levi of the arson charge. The forged warrant against June was voided, and June and Levi stood on the steps of the sheriff's office, blinking in the early light, married, vindicated, and completely exhausted. June looked at Levi. What happens now? He met her eyes. Now we go home. She hesitated. Your ranch. He shook his head. Our ranch. If you want it. June's throat tightened. The inheritance. The house. Her aunt's land. It was hers. She could take it, sell it, leave Eagle Hollow, start over somewhere else. She could go back to being alone, safe, in control. Or she could stay. She thought about the storm, the cabin, the way Levi had held her hands, the way he had trusted her to speak for him, the way he had put himself between her and a gun without hesitating. She thought about the way he looked at her, like she was someone worth standing beside, not someone who needed to be fixed. "I want it," she said quietly. Levi's expression softened. "Then it is yours." They walked back to the edge of town, where Peter waited with the horses. He looked pale, but steady. "I am leaving," he said. "Heading east. I think I have had enough of the West for a while." Levi nodded. "Good luck." Peter glanced at June. "Thank you for listening." She smiled. "Thank you for telling the truth." Peter mounted, tipped his hat, and rode out. June and Levi stood in silence, watching him go. Then, Levi turned to her. "You ready?" She nodded. They mounted and turned east, toward Crescent Ranch. The ranch was 5 miles of rolling grassland, a sturdy house with a wide porch, and a barn that needed new shingles but stood solid. Levi dismounted, tied his horse, and turned to help June down. She took his hand, stepped to the ground, and looked around. The land stretched out in every direction, brown and gold under the winter sun. It was quiet. It was hers. Theirs. Levi watched her. "What do you think?" June took a slow breath. "I think it is the first place I have been that feels like I could stay." Levi's mouth curved. "Good, because I am not letting you leave." She looked at him. He was bruised, his coat torn, his hair a mess. He looked like a man who had been through a fight and come out the other side. He looked like a man who would do it again if he had to. And he was hers. Sort of. Maybe. The marriage was real on paper, but it had started as a lie. She did not know what it was now. Levi seemed to read her mind. He stepped closer. "We did this backward," he said. "I know, but I would like to do it forward now. If you are willing." June's pulse kicked. "What does that mean?" "It means I would like to court my wife," he said. "Slowly. Properly. Until you decide if you want to stay married to me for real, or if you want to tear up the certificate and go your own way." He paused. "Either way, you keep the land. You keep your half of everything. That does not change." June stared at him. "You would let me walk away?" "After everything?" Levi's gaze did not waver. "I want you to stay because you want to, not because you are trapped." June's eyes stung. No one had ever said that to her. No one had ever given her the choice to leave and meant it. She took a step closer. "What if I already know I want to stay?" Levi went very still. "Do you?" She nodded. He let out a breath, half laugh, half relief. "Then we start here." He reached up, brushed a strand of hair from her face, his touch careful. June's breath caught. She leaned into his hand, felt the warmth of his palm against her cheek. And then she kissed him. It was not careful. It was not slow. It was fierce and certain. The kiss of two people who had earned each other through fire and fear and trust, built one hard choice at a time. When they broke apart, Levi was smiling. "That is a hell of a start," he said. June laughed, breathless. "I thought you wanted to go slow." He grinned. I changed my mind. They spent the rest of the day settling in. Levi showed her the house, the barn, the fence line that needed repair. June unpacked her travel case, hung her dresses in the wardrobe, and set her books on the shelf by the window. It felt strange. It felt right. That evening, they sat on the porch and watched the sun set over the valley. The sky turned orange, then pink, then deep purple. Levi handed her a cup of coffee. She took it, her fingers brushing his. "You never told me what you were running from," she said quietly. Levi was silent for a long moment. Then he said, "My father. He wanted me to take over his freight business in Kansas City. I wanted to build something of my own. We fought. He told me if I left, I was not his son anymore." He paused. I left. June's chest ached. "I am sorry." Levi shook his head. "I am not. I would make the same choice again." He looked at her. "What about you? What were you running from?" June took a slow breath. "My parents. They had a plan for my life. Marriage to the right man, a place in society, all of it carefully arranged. I broke the engagement. They disowned me." She met his eyes. "I thought that made me a failure, but maybe it just made me free." Levi reached over, took her hand. "You are not a failure. You are the strongest person I know." June's throat closed. She squeezed his hand. "Thank you." They sat in silence as the stars came out, one by one, and the cold settled in. Finally, Levi stood. "I should check the horses." June stood too. "I will come with you." He smiled. "You do not have to. I want to." They walked to the barn together, their breath misting in the cold air. Inside, the horses were settled, warm and drowsy. Levi checked the water, the feed, then turned to find June watching him. "What?" he asked. She shook her head. "Nothing. I did not think this was how my life would go." Levi stepped closer. "Better or worse?" She smiled. "Better. Much better." He kissed her again, slow this time, tender. When he pulled back, his voice was rough. "Stay with me." June's heart turned over. "I already said I would." He shook his head. "I mean, stay with me. Tonight. Every night. For as long as you want." June's breath caught. She nodded. Yes. Winter settled over Crescent Ranch like a blanket. The days were short and cold, but the house stayed warm. June wrote letters to the school board in Eagle Hollow, offering to teach when the spring term started. Levi worked on the fence line, repaired the barn roof, and planned the spring planting. They fell into a rhythm, easy and steady. In the evenings, they sat by the fire and talked about the past, about the future, about the small, ordinary things that made a life. June learned that Levi hated coffee, but drank it anyway because it was warm. Levi learned that June could not cook to save her life, but was determined to learn. They laughed more than June had laughed in years. And at night, when the fire burned low and the stars filled the sky, they lay together in the warm dark and built a marriage out of trust and time. One morning in late February, June woke to find Levi already up, standing by the window. She sat up. "What is wrong?" He turned, his expression unreadable. "There is a rider coming." June's pulse kicked. She crossed to the window. A man on a gray horse was approaching the house, his pace steady. As he drew closer, June saw the badge on his chest. The sheriff. Her stomach dropped. Levi's hand found hers. Whatever it is, we face it together. She nodded. They went outside. The sheriff dismounted, tipped his hat. Mrs. Granger. Mr. Granger. June's mouth was dry. What can we do for you, Sheriff? He pulled an envelope from his coat. This came for you, from St. Louis. June took the envelope, her hands shaking. She recognized the handwriting. Her mother's. She looked at Levi. He nodded. Open it. She broke the seal, unfolded the letter, read. Her vision blurred. Levi stepped closer. What does it say? June's voice came out thin. They want to see me. My parents. They, she swallowed. They say they were wrong, that they should have listened, that they want to know if I am all right. Levi was quiet. Then he said, What do you want to do? June looked at the letter, at the careful formal script. She thought about the years of silence, the returned letters, the cold weight of their disappointment. And she thought about the life she had built here, with a man who saw her clearly and chose her anyway. She folded the letter, slipped it back into the envelope. I will write them back. I will tell them I am well, that I am married, that I am happy. She looked at Levi. But I am not going back. This is my home now. Levi's expression softened. He pulled her close, pressed a kiss to her hair. The sheriff cleared his throat. I will leave you to it. He mounted, tipped his hat again, and rode away. June and Levi stood on the porch, watching him go. Then Levi said, You are sure? About staying? June turned to face him. I have never been more sure of anything. He smiled. Good, because I am not done courting you yet. She laughed. You have been courting me for 3 months. He pulled her closer, his hands warm on her waist. And I plan to court you for the rest of my life. June's heart turned over. She kissed him, slow and deep, and felt the last piece of fear let go. Spring came slowly, then all at once. The snow melted. The grass turned green. June started teaching at the Eagle Hollow School, a one-room building with 12 students and a leaky roof. She loved it. Levi planted oats and barley, mended every fence on the property, and bought 6 new head of cattle, with money from the settlement Cain had been forced to pay. The ranch grew. So did they. In May, June's aunt's house sold, and the money went into a separate account in her name, just as Levi had promised. In June, Peter Calloway sent a letter from Ohio, saying he had found work as a clerk and was planning to marry. In July, the circuit preacher came through again, and June and Levi stood in front of the whole town and renewed their vows. This time, it was not a bargain. It was a promise. By August, the ranch was thriving. The cattle were healthy, the crops were strong, and the house had new shutters and a fresh coat of paint. June stood on the porch one evening, watching the sun set, and felt something she had not felt in years. Peace. Levi came up behind her, wrapped his arms around her waist. What are you thinking about? She leaned back against him. How far we have come. He kissed her temple. We have a long way to go yet. She turned in his arms, smiled up at him. Good. I am not in a hurry. He laughed, the sound warm and easy. Neither am I. They stood together as the sky turned gold, then rose, then deep blue. And when the first stars appeared, Levi took her hand and led her inside, where the fire was warm and the coffee was terrible, and the life they had built together was waiting. The town threw a dance in September to celebrate the harvest. June wore a new dress, pale blue with white lace, and Levi wore a clean shirt and a string tie that made him look almost civilized. They danced in the town hall, surrounded by neighbors and friends, and for the first time in her life, June felt like she belonged. Not because she had followed someone else's rules, but because she had broken them and built something better. As the music played and the laughter rose, Levi pulled her close and whispered in her ear, "I love you." June's breath caught. She looked up at him, saw the truth in his eyes, steady and sure. She had heard those words before, from her parents, from her former fiancé, but she had never believed them, not until now. "I love you too," she said. And she meant it. They danced until the stars came out, until the musicians packed up and the lanterns burned low. And then they rode home together, side by side, under a sky full of light. The ranch was dark when they arrived, the windows glowing softly. Levi helped her down from her horse, then pulled her into his arms and kissed her, slow and sweet. "Welcome home," he said. June smiled. She looked at the house, the barn, the wide open land stretching out in every direction. She thought about the girl she had been, scared and alone, with nothing but a forged letter and a desperate plan. And she thought about the woman she had become, strong and sure, with a life she had fought for, and a man who would fight beside her. This was not the life she had imagined. It was better. She took Levi's hand. "Let us go inside." He grinned. "Yes, ma'am." They walked up the porch steps together, and the door swung open, warm and welcoming. Behind them, the stars wheeled overhead, silent and steady. And ahead of them, the rest of their lives waited, full of work and weather, and the kind of love that was earned one hard day at a time. June hung her shawl by the door and moved to the stove, where the kettle still held warm water. She poured 2 cups, added a spoonful of honey to hers, and handed the other to Levi. He took it, his eyes never leaving her face. "You are beautiful," he said quietly. She smiled. "You are biased." He shook his head. "I am lucky." June set down her cup, crossed to him, and cupped his face in her hands. "So am I." They stood in the quiet kitchen, the fire crackling softly in the next room, and June felt the years of fear and shame finally fall away. She was not running anymore. She was home. Levi set down his cup and pulled her close. "I have something for you." June blinked. "What?" He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small wooden box. She opened it. Inside was a ring, simple silver with a small stone the color of the sky. "It is not much," Levi said, "but I wanted you to have something that was not part of the bargain. Something that was just because I chose you." June's eyes stung. She slipped the ring onto her finger beside the gold band. It fit perfectly. "It is perfect," she whispered. He kissed her, and the world narrowed to the warmth of his mouth, the steady beat of his heart, the certainty that this was where she was meant to be. When they finally pulled apart, June rested her forehead against his. "What happens now?" she asked. Levi smiled. "Now we live." They stayed up late that night, talking by the fire, making plans for the spring, for the years ahead. And when they finally went to bed, June lay beside her husband and listened to his breathing slow and steady in the dark. She thought about the storm, the pass, the moment she had chosen to trust him. She thought about the life she had left behind, and the life she had found. And she thought about the words he had said that first night in the cabin. "You look like someone who has run out of places to go." He had been right. But he had also been wrong. Because she had not run out of places. She had run into the right one. She closed her eyes and let sleep take her, warm and safe and home. The seasons turned. Winter came again, then spring, then summer. The ranch grew. The herd doubled. The school flourished. And June and Levi built a life together, solid and strong, rooted in trust and time. They fought sometimes, quick flashes of temper that burned out as fast as they sparked. They laughed more. And every night, when the work was done and the stars came out, they sat together on the porch and watched the world go quiet. Years later, when the circuit preacher asked June what made a good marriage, she thought for a long moment. Then she said, "Finding someone who sees you clearly and chooses you anyway, and then choosing them back every single day." The preacher nodded, satisfied. And Levi, standing beside her, took her hand and held on tight.